Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fool Me Once podcast. It's Maris.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back. It's Andrew.
We are in our next episode today in our communication series, which is all around improving your communication in your personal and your professional lives. And today's episode is all centered around personal accountability and what it means to own up to your mistakes, to know before you even take action or speak or do anything that you know exactly how you can justify those actions and that they're coming from a good and healthy place, so that when you are faced in those kind of moments where someone might challenge you or hold a mirror to your face or whatever it is to say, hey, I'm here to hold you accountable, that you are better equipped to do that yourself, so that some of these lessons in life don't slap you in the face like so harshly. And we feel that this episode is the perfect time for us to dive into this, because we've talked about boundary setting, we've talked about basic communication skills, about emotional intelligence and all that kind of stuff. So now is time to take a good hard look at yourself. If you continue to listen beyond right now, then you're someone who is looking to improve yourself, I would imagine. And I think we're so giddy and excited about this episode because it truly becomes like a secret superpower when you learn how to hold yourself accountable, and will clear a lot of issues out of your life and problems out of your life just by taking full ownership of yourself and everything that you say and everything that you do.
Yeah, it's so massively important, whether you're trying to be a more effective leader or just like communicator in your personal life or with coworkers. Holding yourself accountable is like not always the easiest thing to do, and there could be a lot of things that get in the way of that. But I think you'll see through this podcast of like why we're so passionate about it and why it's so important. It can have such a positive impact on you and your communication as you further to like better yourselves in all aspects of your life.
Absolutely. And I know Andrew's excited about this episode. The boundary setting is a little bit difficult for him, so I feel like that was kind of my episode to shine. But Andrew is really good at holding himself accountable through these sort of growth stages that he's been going through. And that's when I feel like accountability becomes so crucial and so important, and when it's the most difficult, because you're trying to kind of transform and evolve into this new version of yourself where you're holding yourself to higher standards. You're wanting to be taken more seriously, maybe in your career, in your relationship. You're actively trying to shift dynamics in your life. And so when you're going down that process, like a key component is knowing how to hold yourself accountable, so that as you fail forward, you're learning from those mistakes and not just kind of like brushing them under the rug and being like, oh, okay. Like secretly, maybe like in private, you're able to see where you messed up, but true growth doesn't come from that, right? It's all about owning up to it, to the person or the people, or just out loud to yourself, you know, to really make sure that lesson is complete.
Yeah. And accountability is almost, it's like that benchmark that you're trying to hit as you're trying to stay consistent when you are making a lot of massive or even small changes to improve your life. Accountability is the thing that kind of keeps you on track, and it says hold yourself accountable to making these consistent changes. And then maybe when things don't go the right way or you do make mistakes, are you learning from them and growing along that process?
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that Andrew and I were kind of talking about when we were prepping for this episode is what's the difference between accountability and having accountability for yourself and responsibility. And what is the definition of having responsibility for yourself or having accountability for yourself? Do you remember? Do you know how to kind of clarify the two?
Yeah, I do. Basically, so accountability has more to do with like setting the standard for how you're going to show up, and then being prepared to answer or justify why it is you did what you did or are doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And then responsibility was more like you're responsible for the things that you've committed to, or it's not necessarily in the realm of conflict as much. So I think that was sort of the nuance, is when you think of the word accountability, it's typically that moment when you're faced with proving, or like you said, justifying why your actions or words or steps that you took were valid.
Yeah.
Whereas responsibility is more, okay, I'm taking ownership of my own person, my own thoughts and my own goals and my commitments and the things that I'm going to do. And we felt like the word responsibility and taking responsibility for yourself was a little bit more aligned with next month's series, which next month's series, I guess we'll introduce it.
Yeah.
Next month's series is for August, is going to be how to create your own reality. So August is all around creating your own reality. And that's where we're super pumped, because that series, we're going to get to tie a ton of our marketing, business type growth episodes into that, and just what it looks like to have a vision for your life or goals for your life, and then really make those things be actualized and brought into fruition, right? And one of those things will be taking responsibility for your life and the steps that you're going to take to get there. So I just felt like maybe that'd be good, you know, a good little mini lesson in here just to teach you guys the difference between accountability and responsibility. If you're watching this on YouTube, then we definitely will have thrown those definitions up on our handy dandy magic mirror. And if you aren't yet watching us there, you can find us on YouTube at Actualized Lifestyle. And then, of course, we have the cooking channel and the other YouTube channels. But if you're just here listening on the podcast, then thanks for listening in. As always, this episode is going to cover our framework, which is going over the common obstacles of the lesson, the opportunities in learning the lesson, which ties into our bigger reward of why you really want to learn this and why it's important and going to benefit you in life to kind of master and tackle the concepts of this lesson. Yes. And then you can jump into the extended, right?
Yeah, and then in the extended, we kind of get more into the step-by-steps of what you can actually do to hold yourself accountable, and like more specific, tangible things that can...
guidelines.
Yeah, guidelines, if you will. Yeah.
So if you find yourself and you say, yes, okay, holding myself accountable is something that I want to practice and learn and get better at, but I need some sort of structure in order to get me there, to where I feel like when I'm in the moment where I now get to choose, am I going to hold myself accountable or not? Those kind of 5-step guidelines that we're going to give you in the extended is where that you can really have that concrete structure for improving your own accountability tactics as you move forward in your life. Because Lord knows we're going to have lots of new opportunities as we grow and evolve and are presented with new tests and new lessons where accountability is going to come into play. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so... I mean, learning and growing, you're constantly faced with obstacles and opportunities, and then learning them and moving forward. So... yeah, I'm excited for this one.
I am too. So obstacle number 1, in thinking about holding yourself accountable, Andrew, I'm going to pass it to you. What is the number 1 obstacle that you think most people would face when they're in a position where they're needing to hold themselves accountable?
Yeah, so I know I resonate with this a lot, and I think a lot of other people do as well, but pride and ego play a big role in being an obstacle to holding yourselves accountable. We all have that like voice or story we tell ourselves in our head, and then faced with an opportunity to actually like show up and admit where we may have done something wrong or could have done something differently, we don't want people to view us in that negative light. So rather than humbling ourselves and owning up to it, our pride and ego just kind of take over control and drive that car of like, no, like I'm going to stay stubborn in this situation,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to own up to this and face up to it, and I'm going to essentially run from the problem.
Yeah, instead of leaning into it and thinking, okay, well, here's my moment to learn. And so going back to the whole concept of, if in the definition, holding yourself accountable or accountability looks like being able to justify your actions, then that implies that there's a level of justice that comes with accountability. So the way I kind of see it is, kind of even in the broader realm, I'm always talking about how life is giving us these lessons, right? Like God's testing us, the universe is testing us and saying, hey, here's a lesson that you need to learn, and I'm going to keep putting the same lesson on your path until you finally learn it. And not only learn it, but learning it means integrating it into your life. And along our path, when we're faced with these obstacles and these lessons, and especially when it comes down to accountability, justice has to come through. Like, if you did something wrong or you handled something poorly and it negatively put that energy out onto another person or group of people or just out there in the world, right? Like, you put that negative energy out, or the deception, the manipulation, whatever it is that you're now having to hold yourself accountable to, those things, if you don't choose to finally accept and integrate and learn that lesson and own up to it yourself, then that's where justice will come back in and be like, okay, well, if you're not going to make it right, then that's when you're slammed with, boom, either here's, legal action being taken, or just your friend is now standing in front of your face and calling you out, or your client or your boss or whoever it is, your spouse is looking you in the face and saying, hey, this is the truth, or this is my truth and what I feel is happening and what I think is going on. And that's your moment, right? That's your moment to say yes. Or like Andrew's saying, when pride or fear or whatever get in the way, and now your ego is trying to protect you from some sort of backlash, which I know is number 2. So I'll try not to skip ahead. But if you're stuck and letting your ego kind of protect you, then you are not going to want to sort of fess up and say, like, okay, I accept full responsibility and I'm going to hold myself accountable for what it is that I have done. And then you live in this place of where everybody else can feel your pride and your ego trying to protect you, right?
Yeah. And like you were saying, by not fessing up, not owning up to it, you're essentially, like, karmically, you're putting yourself in a bad spot to where what goes around sort of comes around. So you could be shown this lesson repeatedly if you're not showing the universe that you learned from it. So it's kind of like what we resist persists. So it's going to keep happening until you're fessing up and owning up to those situations.
And what's so funny about this, well, not funny.
It's hilarious.
What's like ironic, I feel, when I think about this, is if pride and ego is the thing that's keeping you from, let's say, when someone actually, faces, what am I trying to say? When someone actually like holds a mirror to your face and says, hey, here's a mirror, look into it. Like, this is what you did. This is, what's happening because of your actions or your words or whatever. Like, if pride is keeping you from owning up in that moment and taking accountability, the ironic thing to me is that it was pride in your ego that kept you from holding yourself accountable before you ever even made those actions. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I know we'll talk about in the extended, but I do definitely want to say here is when you learn how to hold yourself accountable just as a human being, that to me looks like setting standards for yourself. I'm an honest person. I own up to my mistakes. I ask for forgiveness. I show other people forgiveness. I give other people grace. I am somebody who wants to learn and wants to get better. And you affirm those things about yourself, and that sets you up to where you're already checking yourself before you're speaking and before you're acting, to where if someone then is going to come to you later and be like, here's a mirror that I'm holding up to your face, you're fully prepared as to why you feel justified, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
your justification for what's gone down, and maybe that mirror gets flipped on that person at that point, right? Like, it's hard to say, but that's a very common thing that will happen, is people who don't want to look at themselves will project things onto others, hold the mirror up to that person. So you can only control yourself. You can only be accountable for your own words and your own actions. So the better you get at kind of knowing yourself, knowing your truth, becoming self-actualized, the closer you're going to be to living authentically, to where anything and everything that comes out of your mouth and actions that you take are pure and just. And then accountability will be a piece of cake. It's going to be, you're going to live and breathe accountability, right? Like, it's just going to be part of who you are.
Yeah,
So I just
you're going to
think
be asking the universe, you're going to be asking the universe for opportunities to show up more accountable, and for situations to happen like that. You'll be more eager rather than running from those opportunities and kind of turning the other way or letting your ego get in the way.
Yeah.
That-
In which case, if you fail that test, then you're not going to be presented with bigger, better, more abundant opportunities, because you're just showing energetically that you're not equipped to learn and grow. So I feel like we're so excited about this. We're skipping into the opportunities, y'all.
Yeah, that's so true.
Let's reel it back a little bit. We already kind of touched on this, but obstacle number 2 is all around the fear of just, again, the backlash.
Yeah,
Like,
the potential consequence of not owning up and not facing the situation.
yeah, but it's not even that. It's the fear of backlash when you do own up. I think that's, like,
Yeah, this is where I had an example that stuck in my head for this one is, if you think of a child who's not supposed to play with the ball in the house, and then they play with the ball and you end up breaking some sentimental thing that your parents are upset about.
Before.
Yeah, I think we've all done this at some time or another.
Wait, I cannot stop thinking. Like, I had a stuffed soccer ball that we were not allowed to play with in the house, and I remember kicking it, and I broke the little, like, glass vase thing that was around a candle. Not a good day for me.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. We were playing baseball in the house and broke like a little clay figurine of my mom's, and yeah, that's just like such a horrible feeling. So it's like, okay, I know I made a mistake, and the potential consequence and the
Like,
fear.
you have 2 options in that moment after you make the mistake.
Right, exactly. So you can sort of blame someone else or just turn the other way and try, like,
Hide all the broken glass and pretend like it never happened and wait for someone to find it and catch you.
That's very true. Or you can simply go, not simply, but it's extremely tough, is own up to the mistake. Be like, I broke that. I know I'm not supposed to be playing with this in the house, and then face whatever's coming to you. But
I'll give you some of my allowance if you're someone who gets allowance.
Yeah.
I
But
did
the
not
good
get
part,
allowance.
it's like so freeing when you do that. Because one, you're not keeping in some sort of like thing you're lying about or being, just being untruthful. You're taking extreme ownership over the mistake that was made. By owning up to that situation, then you're allowing that person to show you grace in that situation. So you're like, I made this mistake and I'm prepared to face whatever grounding or whatever consequence comes with that situation. And then in turn, that builds more trust, and they understand, like, okay, you may have made a mistake, but you owned up to your mistake and you're prepared to face the consequence and then move forward and show that you will no longer make that mistake in the future.
Yes. And so with this example, just tie it back for us, like, because this part, we're still in the obstacle part, not the opportunity.
I'm like jumping the gun to opportunities.
So, like, this is more so, like, so when the example with the kid with the ball, like, how is this an example of fear of consequences? Because I know you talk down the path of when you make the right choice, but I think this part's a little bit more about, like, when you make the wrong choice. Like, someone's not owning up to that. Like, you're a little kid. you broke the glass, you hid the pieces, you don't want to tell your parents because you have a fear of the consequences. So like,
yeah, you're scared of what, like being grounded or your PlayStation getting taken away. So then you go down the path of hiding it or trying to like fix it before they even discover it.
And the irony just comes back over and over and over again in any example we give, because at the end of the day, like Andrew just showed you and kind of talked you through what it could look like when you take the ownership, right? Then your parents can show you grace or mercy, and like you're showing that you learned the lesson, right? But when you don't do that and you have the fear of the consequences, you're almost like manifesting those consequences to happen. Like,
yeah, and you're kind of always looking over your shoulder of like, is today the day I get caught?
Yeah, because you know that like justice has to come, right? Or we innately feel that. I think we innately as human beings understand when we do something wrong that there will be consequences. Unless we, you know, not to get all religious, but, you know, like growing up, it's like, repent your sins, right? And then you'll be free, right? So it's like just learning to own up. That's just the idea of like learning to own up, and then you feel free of that guilt and free of that. And you're creating that space to sort of balance everything back out. Like, okay, you did something wrong, but now you're taking ownership. And so a lot of people, I think, just get stuck in the fear of like, well, what's going to happen? Because you feel like you're deserving of some sort of consequence because you did something wrong. And you're allowing that fear to completely consume you to the point that you don't do the right thing, which is sort of owning up and taking accountability. And so then you're left with the consequences that you are fearful of. And then I feel like that is a vicious cycle if you learn that pattern. Like, because you're teaching yourself, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're convincing yourself that you're going to have a consequence anyway and you deserve it anyway. So just how long can I get away with it before I get grounded, before I get caught? And maybe I'll just, you know, ask for forgiveness then once they catch me. And that doesn't build you as a person or anything like that. So
yeah, because if you kind of get away, if you're like, oh, I got away with it this time, then like the next situation that happens that's maybe more serious, you're like, oh, I can maybe get away with it this time, and then the next time and the next time, and that just is just, it's creating a slippery slope that you don't want to operate in.
Okay, so that was obstacle number 2. Now, obstacle number 3, I feel like we kind of boiled this down to an obstacle that can come into play whenever you are in a position where you're needing to hold yourself accountable is our natural instinct to be defensive and protect ourselves from some sort of perceived threat. And in a moment when somebody else is holding a mirror to your face, to use this as an example, and you have not yet held yourself accountable on your own whim, you know, you haven't taken initiative to do that. So you're being now challenged by another person. That person holding a mirror to your face is the perceived threat. So our natural instincts, I think, is to protect ourselves from anything that feels threatening. Yeah. So we're going to go into straight defense mode. And that is so obvious to people when you're so wrapped up in just only caring about protecting yourself and not having any regard for how your words or your actions have now affected another person or group of people or situation. And you're in defense mode because you think that you need to protect yourself, when all along you are the threat. The threat is what's looking you in the mirror. That's so not true. The person holding the mirror. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, like, that's so crazy.
And that's what people, I feel like, they don't want to see it so badly that they will just defend their way out of it to the point to where you're just sabotaging relationships and opportunities like left and right.
Yeah, and the more, I feel like the more people don't want to face it, the more exasperated they get or aggressive they could get in potential situations, because they're in that fight or flight mode, right? Of the threat, and they're losing so much sight over
like, this person is threatening me or my business or my integrity or my self-worth or my whatever it is. Like, they'll convince themselves. A person who doesn't know how to hold themselves accountable will convince themselves to all ends of the night and think that, well, this person is here to threaten me and they're challenging me and they're the problem. But guess what? I can promise you, the person who has integrity, that came up and held the mirror in front of your face, who isn't afraid to speak the truth and talk through this and work this out, just like your parents. Your parents, how many times have you heard your parents be like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Like, I just would rather you be honest and tell me the truth, that I'm not going to be mad at you. I'm not going to punish you, right? But when you don't hold yourself accountable, then that person is just left there shaking their head like, all right, like, but guess what? They're going to go to bed and they're going to go to sleep being like, man, it's really unfortunate that little Timmy didn't know how to just hold himself accountable. And I guess, you know, we're going to get back on the horse, and next time he falls off, we're going to go right back to this lesson yet again. And one day I hope he can just figure it out and learn so that he can be better equipped in future situations like this. And that's what the parents thinking, right? Going to sleep just as fine. Little Timmy is crawling into his bed freaking out because he's like, oh my god, like I messed up, I didn't own up to it, like spiraling, thinking like he like things are gonna get worse, what's gonna happen now, like when is, you know, we don't have to use the word karma if you don't believe in karma, but like when is justice gonna rear its ugly head and come for me?
Yeah, and all that stress and anxiety that little Timmy's going through because he didn't fess up and own up. Yeah. All because he's trying to protect himself for the perceived threat, protect the ego, while all the while losing sight of the opportunities that could be gained from just owning up and taking accountability. So
I love that. That was smooth.
Yeah,
that was a smooth segue. So part 2 is introducing our opportunities. Andrew and I are very overzealous about this.
Yeah.
So
we've already talked about them, so let's
so we're done now.
Bring it back. Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Opportunity number 1 is that personal growth.
Yes.
So we've now decided that little Timmy is our example maker of this episode. So little Timmy can learn personal growth through this moment. It is the test of accountability. That is what it all boils down to. And that's what this podcast is all about, right? That's why we're going into these nuanced topics of the bigger themes of the month. Like, yes, we only have like these 2 weeks of episodes that we're doing around communication because we launched mid-July, but still every episode around communication, it's not just, hey, learn how to speak your truth and then you're done. There's nuances to life. There's nuances to relationships, to dynamics, to all the ways that make you a more self-actualized person. So that's why we decided to do it this way and to go so deep into the nuances. And ultimately, everything is going to tie back to yourself and to your own personal development and growth, because we firmly believe when we created Actualize that every single person has an opportunity to connect with themselves, to understand themselves better, understand what they're here to do, what their purpose is, and how to show up in personal and professional relationships in a more healed and healthy and productive way. We want to help create better, productive members of society that are all pushing everyone forward into a better, more evolved world, right? And consciousness, and connecting back to our heart space and tapping into that sort of heart center of consciousness and love and all of that kind of stuff. So personal growth is in probably every episode. Some element of personal growth will be the number 1 opportunity. Yeah,
for sure. In this case specifically, it's all about that lifestyle of personal growth is like taking the action, analyzing like the results from that action or getting the feedback from that action, integrating it, and then taking the next action. So little Timmy made the mistake. He could have owned up to the mistake, learned the lesson from it, and then moving forward, he's no longer making that mistake.
Yes. And I love that you use the word integration, because that has been one of like the biggest, one of your biggest opportunities that you've learned in taking sort of accountability seriously. Because I think Andrew sort of just by his own experiences up into a certain point was sort of taught like indirectly taught, you know, just by examples given to him, that, oh, you can just acknowledge where your faults are or where your things are. Maybe you say sorry and then you kind of like move on. And just the acknowledgement originally felt like, okay, well, like, I acknowledged it. Like, I know that I have this problem. I know that I keep making these mistakes, and like, I'm admitting that. And that's where a lot of people get confused. Is accountability is not just admitting. It's admitting, learning from that admission, and then integrating it so that you're not repeating the same mistake. Yes. And so many people repeat the same mistakes because they're just like, I know I have this problem. This isn't new to me. I've always been like this. My whole life people have told me this. And people just get all like about it, you know? Like, and it's like, okay, like
we're all just supposed to deal with your problem.
Yeah.
Like, we're all supposed to deal with your problem.
Yeah, like, so this is just who you are, and everyone's supposed to walk on eggshells around you and just accept the fact that you're a bully or you're a this or you're a that. It's excuses that all stem from your ego, again, to protect yourself. Because if you convince yourself, well, this is just how I am, and you tell yourself that story, this is who I am, then how is anyone else supposed to do any, like, we're forced then to just accept that that's how you are because you've accepted that about yourself. So when personal growth comes into it, is the second you integrate a lesson, you truly integrate it and you say, you know what, this is unacceptable. I deem it unacceptable. Mm-hmm. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Like, I'm self-reflecting and I'm saying, this is not okay. How I'm speaking to this person is just not okay anymore. How I'm showing up in my marriage is not okay. Mm-hmm. This isn't the husband that I want to be. This isn't the wife that I want to be. This isn't the mother that I envision myself as. This is not who I showed up as in my job interview. Like, I sold a way different story to my boss before I started working here, or I painted a way different picture to my client on what I was going to deliver. Whatever the situation is, you've got to know when to hold yourself accountable and how to then take actionable steps to change that, which is what we're going to help you with in the extended. If you don't know this already, just really quickly, if this happens to be your first episode you've ever heard or watching on YouTube, you can access the extendeds by clicking on the link in the description box of the YouTube video or visit our website. It's a $22.99 a month membership where you have access to every single extended episode and all of the tangible resources that go with all of those episodes. So the price is $22.99. Mm-hmm. It'll remain that price, and we'll just continue to build more and more and more episodes and more content in there. So definitely check it out if you haven't. But I think that, you know, personal growth, when it comes to being the number one lesson, is really rewarding from the respect that... respect.
Yeah.
Respect is number two.
Great segue.
You get, yeah, I mean, it all ties together, but let's go ahead and jump into that. I think we covered personal growth.
Yeah, I think we're good on personal growth.
So building a new relationship.
Yeah, the respect that comes with to owning up from that relationship with the person. So little Timmy and his mom, he owns up to the situation, faces the consequence, and then that respect that the parent now has for little Timmy is far greater because he owned up to the situation. And that rings true for any situation, personal, professional, that you own up to in your life. Is you're gonna gain a deeper respect in the relationship with people.
Yeah, and just the way I think about it is you have a newfound appreciation for respect as a whole. So you understand, like, respect isn't this concept that it's like, oh, someone in the position of power demands respect from people, quote unquote, beneath him, right? And that's how I feel like, you know, you can get lost in that with sort of like religious and like societal conditioning growing up. Is respect looks like you're submissive and you are showing respect to other people. I don't know that I was really taught that it's okay and safe to feel like you deserve equal respect. And when you first respect yourself, and you understand what it feels like to respect yourself and you have self-respect, then not only will other people respect you more, but you'll be more equipped and prepared to understand your own relationship with respect so that you're showing then respect to other people. And it kind of shifts this sort of perspective around respect, where respect is not demanded. It's not forced. It's not this thing that's just automatically given. Respect is earned. And respect is earned between you and every single person, whether that's a parent or a boss or anybody. You deserve for them to be showing you respect if they expect respect from you. And no one is ever going to convince me otherwise. I'm just kidding. But like, seriously, like that is, I remember at a young age being like, if I don't feel respected, I don't care if you're my uncle or my teacher or my whatever, if you're disrespecting me in the process while demanding respect, that didn't make sense to me. And I remember being very young and being like, this just flat out doesn't make any kind of sense to me. Like, why do you think that you should have respect and I'm being disrespected?
Well, I think we're taught that just because you're an elder, you automatically respect your elder. And I think that is a good rule of thumb. You should lead with that. But also...
But you shouldn't disrespect your elders. You see what I'm saying? Like, you should respect everybody.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you should literally respect everybody. And the only time when I feel like you're in a position to not respect somebody back is when you're creating those boundaries when someone's disrespecting you. And it doesn't mean you disrespect them back. Like, not showing respect is not the same thing as showing disrespect. It's just withholding respect until it's earned and shown that this is a safe place where you have earned and shown that you respect my boundaries, I respect your boundaries, and then it's given freely. It's not forced.
Yeah. Sounds great. Opportunity number 2, respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And opportunity number 3 is sort of the thread woven in similarly to the obstacles, the thread being personal growth in every single episode of communication. Opportunity number 3 is simply just having those stronger, healthier relationships with everyone that you're with. Andrew kind of touched on this. It cultivates mutual respect. It allows people to know where you stand.
They know you live in integrity. So there's a sense of trust built between those people in those situations. Like, I know I have a stronger relationship and deeper respect with people where maybe mistakes have happened. They've owned up and we've completely like moved past them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it just builds a sense of like a safe, secure place, what everyone needs in relationships. If you're trying to form those deeper bonds where you truly depend on people and you grow together and all of that, each side, the more accountability that either party is holding, because every relationship faces a moment where you have to hold yourself accountable. Every single one, no matter what the dynamic is. You as the parent need to hold yourself accountable to the child needs to hold themselves accountable to the parent, and vice versa. Anyone that you can think of, if you're interacting with another human being, that opportunity to hold yourself accountable will present itself. And the only thing that happens when you do that is you now love and appreciate that person more. You trust them more, like Andrew said, and you carry yourself with a sense of integrity and poise. And again, just to simplify it, whatever you put out into the world is what you're going to get back. So I think that's all I got.
That's solid. Yeah.
Mic drop right there.
I don't know how I follow that up. But yeah, any relationship you have, if it's like a business partnership or a deep personal relationship, stuff's going to hit the fan and the going's going to get tough. And those relationships that are built off integrity and there's been accountability and mistakes that have been addressed, you know how that person's going to show up when the going does get tough. Yes. And if you know a person has showed up time and time again not holding themselves accountable, they're going to go and run the other direction when stuff gets tough. And those aren't the people you want like in battle with you when you're like on these business partnerships or people in your close circle. Cause you can't trust people. Then like, what do you have? What is that relationship?
Yeah. And if you can't trust yourself, then what do you have?
Yeah. And you don't have the self-respect.
If you don't have your own self-respect and integrity and hold yourself personally accountable, then why in the world is anyone else going to do that? You know? So quit blaming everyone else for all of your problems and hold a mirror up to your face before somebody else has the chance to do it. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I think that's great.
On that. And if you're still listening to this, then you're fired up and you're wanting to make this change, and we applaud you for that. And we're right there with you. We had to go through this and it wasn't easy, but we've come up with 5 practical steps and tangible guidelines that you can take in order to improve this life skill for yourself. So come over with us over to the extended. If you're already signed up to the membership, then we'll see you in just a second. If you're not joining us, then thank you so much for listening here, and we'll see you guys in our next video.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next time.